This wasn't random. The trait you call you. Someone once told you something about yourself. You're so calm. Or maybe, you're the responsible one. You're so independent. You read people so well. You're always the funny one. Over time, you start believing it. It becomes part of how you describe yourself. But there is a strange possibility hidden inside many personality traits. Some of them didn't start as personality. They started as solutions. Small adjustments that worked in a certain environment. And after repeating long enough, those adjustments slowly began to look like identity. How adaptation slowly becomes personality. Imagine a child growing up in a house where conflict appears suddenly. Arguments start quickly. Voices rise without warning. After a while, the child learns something useful. Stay calm, stay quiet, don't add more tension to the room. Years later, that same person may be described as incredibly composed, good in crises, emotionally stable. But calmness is not always the absence of emotion. Sometimes it is practice. Practice learned very early. Another example. Imagine someone who grows up in an environment where approval is unpredictable. Sometimes people are warm, sometimes distant. The safest strategy becomes simple. Be pleasant, be agreeable. Make people comfortable. As an adult, this person may be described as warm, charming, easy to like. They know how to read a room quickly. They sense when someone feels uncomfortable. From the outside, it looks like natural social intelligence, but part of that ability may have started as something else. Learning to detect emotional weather before it changed. When intelligence becomes defense. Some environments reward precision. Imagine someone who grew up constantly misunderstood. Their words were taken the wrong way. They were blamed for things they didn't mean. After enough experiences like that, something changes. They become extremely careful with language. They think ahead before speaking. They prepare explanations. As adults, these people often sound very articulate, thoughtful, sharp. But sometimes intelligence itself becomes organized around defense, not just knowing things. Knowing them before someone else defines the situation first. The quiet negotiation. With environment. Environments rarely say things directly. No one needs to tell a child, become quiet. The room can teach it. No one needs to say, be useful if you want affection. The pattern teaches it. No one needs to say, don't take up too much space. Small reactions teach that far more clearly than words. A sigh, a look, a pause in the conversation. These tiny signals slowly train behavior, and the behavior that works best repeats. The traits that get rewarded. What gets rewarded repeats. What prevents punishment repeats. What reduces tension repeats. Eventually, repetition becomes automatic. A person who always solved problems becomes the responsible one. A person who avoided conflict becomes the calm one. A person who read emotions carefully becomes the intuitive one. A person who needed little becomes the independent one. But usefulness is not always the same as authenticity. Sometimes it is just efficiency. When adaptation becomes identity. This is where things become confusing, because the adaptation often works. It earns respect. People trust the dependable one. They admire the calm one. They appreciate the agreeable one. They rely on the responsible one. The environment rewards the finished trait. But almost nobody asks where it came from, so the adaptation slowly disappears into identity. Even the person carrying it may stop questioning it. They simply say, that's just who I am. The hidden contract. Many personality traits also carry quiet rules. If you are the calm one, you are not supposed to lose control. If you are the funny one, you are not supposed to darken the mood. If you are the responsible one, you are not supposed to fall apart. If you are the independent one, you are not supposed to need too much. No one may have said these rules out loud, but the environment often treats them as real. And slowly behavior stops feeling like expression. It begins feeling like maintenance, maintaining the role that keeps everything stable, when strengths begin as survival. One of the strangest parts of this process is that adaptation often creates real abilities. Someone who constantly monitored emotional atmosphere becomes very perceptive. Someone who solved problems early becomes extremely competent. Someone who had to manage chaos becomes highly organized. These are real strengths, which is why adaptation can feel convincing. If a trait only caused problems, people would question it easily. But when a trait brings success, usefulness, even admiration, it becomes harder to ask where it came from. The moment the pattern appears, sometimes the pattern becomes visible in small moments. A compliment feels slightly uncomfortable. Someone offers help and you instinctively refuse. You feel guilty when resting. You explain yourself too quickly during disagreement. You feel responsible for tension that wasn't yours. None of these moments feel dramatic, but together they form a quiet pattern. The personality trait may not only be expression, it may also be old training. The question most people avoid. Once that possibility appears, an uncomfortable question follows. If the environment shaped parts of your personality, which parts were truly chosen? And which parts were simply repeated long enough to feel natural? Most people cannot answer easily, because many adaptations begin early, before there was enough distance to notice alternatives. The strange effect of leaving the environment. Another strange thing happens when people leave the environments that shape them. The place changes. The family changes. The relationship ends. But the pattern remains. Someone who learned to monitor emotional tension continues doing it everywhere. Someone who learned to be low maintenance keeps expecting little from others. Someone who learned to control emotion still struggles to show distress. The environment is gone, but the adaptation continues. The final realization. This doesn't mean personality is fake. It means personality is layered. Some traits come from temperament, some from imitation, some from pressure, some from what once kept the environment stable. And once these layers repeat long enough, they become indistinguishable from identity. So when someone says, "This is just who I am," they may be right. This is who they became. The version of themselves that worked best in the environments they lived in. But whether that version represents the whole story is a different question. Because sometimes the most familiar parts of a personality are not the clearest evidence of who someone is. They are evidence of adaptation repeated so many times it began to look permanent. And somewhere underneath those familiar traits, another possibility always remains. Not a hidden true self waiting dramatically underneath. Something quieter than that. A version of you that simply learned, very early, when it was safer not to appear.
I'm Oliver, and now you know why this happens. Or at least a part of it.